Today in Higher Learning, while a proposal to increase the cost of tuition at the state's 3 public colleges got a lot of attention last week, another plan that will impact the future of higher education in Rhode Island was released. The state's Director of Administration released a series of recommendations to streamline higher education and help the schools meet the demand for highly skilled workers in the state. Here to talk about it is, of course, Peter Kerwin from the Rhode Island Higher Education Assistance Authority. Always a pleasure to see you in here, Peter.
Good to see you, Michaela.
All right, so what brought about this report? Why now?
Well, basically last spring, the General Assembly, towards the end of the session, floated a proposal to kind of merge the Office of Higher Education and the Rhode Island Department of Education.
Okay.
Now, OHE, as the name implies, kind of oversees the state's higher education system, whereas RIDE oversees the elementary and secondary system, everything from the elementary schools to high schools.
Right.
There was some concern with that proposal that if you merged those two particular entities, the way the political system works, more attention was going to be focused on RIDE, on the elementary and secondary, and that the higher ed stuff would become an afterthought.
Yeah.
So
which we still need to focus on it.
Right, and you know, you've got local school committees, so there's lots of pressure, you know, on that, and then you know, people get focused on their local school and they reach out to their elected officials more. So the concern was, you know, we don't want to have higher ed becoming a kind of forgotten, you know,
kind of kick to the curb.
Exactly. So what happened was the General Assembly finally decided, they did a budget amendment where they said, they directed Richard Leach, the Director of Administration, to do a survey, you know, find out what are some of the best practices out there for organizing higher education, come back to us with your recommendations, and that's what he did last week. He had a deadline of November 1st, he had pulled together some different higher ed officials, and that's what he reported back last week.
So what were some of his recommendations?
Well, basically he found that, you know, we should stick with the system, return to the idea of having a focused Commissioner of Higher Education for the state. And he also found that the model that they have now of having the Board of Governors for Higher Education and the staff people at the Office of Higher Education was very effective in terms of, you know, have a model for making sure that the higher ed system is working in a well-governed structure and providing some long-term policy analysis so that you can really get focused on looking at things like online education, that you can look at, you know, workforce development, make sure that we're turning out the kind of workers that the economy needs out of our schools, and also the development of Common Core standards. So that's what they're really going to be focusing on going forward, thanks to these recommendations. He also suggested the creation of a pre-K through 20+ advisory board that kind of spans the Board of Governors for Higher Education and the Board of Regents for elementary and secondary. I mean, basically you're going to have this group looking at the entire educational structure in the state, you know, from all the way from pre-kindergarten to adult learners. So there's a lot there.
All right, so much information, lots to keep up with. Peter, we want to thank you so much for coming in this morning. As always, for more information from College Bound Fun, you can head to foxprovidence.com.